Okay, now the recording has started. I'm just gonna show this again for transparency reasons. And now we can really start and delve into the material. Well, welcome again. Third session. We already had interesting ones before that. And we were thinking that we still want a little bit of an introduction. And that's why we created a little bit of a Padlet, because last time it took quite some time for us to introduce ourselves. So now we want to use a small tool, and I will share this with you. Here we go. And then you can just insert your introduction here. Just opening the chat to send you the link. There you go. Please open it. And then you should find this Padlet. And then you can just briefly introduce yourself. And then make sure that you create your own new post. And then just go for your name, your institute, where you come from, what your link is. And if you don't feel like doing that, it's completely fine. Everyone can stay private. The password is participation, no capital letter. Or I can still see people writing. All right. Do you still need more time? Oh, I can see that Petra is still writing. And if anyone's having problems, let me know. But I think this already gives us a little bit of an insight of who's here. And also the different kind of projects we're working on. Okay, yeah. But I would also invite you to just continue this at a later point in time. We can go back to this and also use this a little bit of a, I don't know, of a collection of people who are involved, and maybe, you know, you can contact each other and talk about topics that that look interesting to you, or cooperations. Okay. Thank you. And also for this lovely picture, Mindya. I remember it all too well. And now I would just jump to our input for today. Now that we have done this, the introduction round. Because after our last meetings where we got a little bit of an introduction into OPIN, but also heard from Petra on the children's parliament that they organized with OPIN in Slovenia, we want to focus on one thing that in the DIGY project always comes up, which is basically how do you build a strong network that supports your idea for youth participation. And we think that that is probably one of the most difficult things, because it requires good planning, and you really need to have contacts or generate contacts. And we can all learn from each other here. And David from Youth Horizon, who are based in Georgia, they started a project in Georgia, and they really did a good job on activating their network on different levels, youth, but also municipality and so forth. And we thought that it was really worth sharing their expertise. So I will now kindly ask David to give us a little bit of an input on how to build a successful network. And I will show his presentation now. And let's start.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yeah. Very well, yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks for inviting me to deliver the presentation on this subject. And I believe it is still an ongoing process, and it's never done until you're really done building network, because it's always work in progress as long as before the final goal is achieved. And so I'll just briefly point out some of the aspects from our experience that I believe there is some more to it, but then we can all share our personal subjective experiences. In our case, it was all about starting building network before the e-participation process begins, and during, and also we're thinking of in the long term about how it should be followed up in the future. But I'll focus mainly on the process that started and in the middle, where we are right now, and how have we started. So Max, please, could you please turn the second slide? Yeah, so just to give you an idea about the project we are currently doing, and give you an idea of the key milestones, I'm gonna need your help, Max. Yeah, so we have started with the learning phase, where we brought together young people in local municipality and providing them with the learning experience and to fill the gaps in knowledge and experience they might have, in order for them to provide the meaningful participation and at the later stage. Max, could you please? We are doing a preparation for the e-learning, e-participation, where we bringing young people to set goals and design the e-participation process. How are they seeing involvement of different actors at different stages of the e-participation project? And the next stage is the fieldwork stage, where they're actually doing it, where young people are inviting their peers and whoever has say in the process of e-participation. And it all happens with our facilitation by giving sort of a wide scope for the independent action. The next step in our case is a decision-making step, where young people come together to decide on a final decision, make a final decision through voting, and this is what we call results phase. And it all goes to the next stage, where this whole process of whatever was generated had been generated throughout the e-participation process is analyzed and reflected in a policy recommendation document, which is later on presented to decision makers. And that is the final stage. So this is just a brief overview of whatever we've been up to since November and until 2021 March. Now, how it all started in terms of networking, please, could you please, Max? Yeah, thanks. It all started with asking a question about the mapping, asking the question about who should be involved and what would be the role at each point, time and action. And we started with the mapping, and whoever has to do with the e-participation in that particular place, region, where we are doing that. And we decided to start with a missing link that is not present in that particular place, and that is the Youth Advisory Council. And if you press creating Youth Advisory Council in order to fill in the gap between the local municipality and local youth population. Max, please, yeah. So local youth population that is also represented by schools and youth groups, and using OPIN to enable that communication and exchange of feedback. Basically, between the local youth advisory council and the local youth population, and also between the local municipality and the youth advisory council. But also it was complemented by the central agency, the national central agency, so-called the youth agency, that is the central agency under the Prime Minister that is currently rolling out the reform international level, a part of which is that region where we're working right now. There was our efforts were combined with the sort of top-down approach. Our role was more of a bottom-up approach. So there was a good moment where where our efforts were matched and met together in space and time both. So that created a good sort of cause for cooperation, a good opportunity for it. And please, Max, if you just click, I guess, twice. Yeah, and one more time. So yeah, it all came. The whole picture became clear later on once we finalize the mapping. That's whoever is going to be involved has to have an opportunity to engage in the process and has to have a certain role at a certain stage. Yeah, but most crucially, that's the missing link we have established within the project is the local advisory youth council. The idea, the purpose behind it was, to create a platform for the dialogue between between the local community grassroots and the central and and the higher levels. Yeah. So on the next slide, I briefly outline some of the key points for creating a trusting environment, which is sort of maybe a buzzword, and maybe something that we hear a lot, but then it's really hard to overestimate the importance of that. But it takes a lot of components to create a trusting environment. And from our experience, the first one that I'd like to highlight is in establishing a purpose, making sure that the purpose is shared and understood, conveyed well to your network partners, and it is sort of well incorporated into their role in the process. And but also the second factor would be measuring expectations, where we went through into the depths across our network members to check their motivations, their resources, capacities to be integrated into the process, and checked at what point in time would be their role in bringing to fruition our e-participation project, and making sure that our expectations are also made clear was another also aspect contributing to a trusting environment. And the next factor I'd like to point out is the coordination and communication, but most prominently communication, which is sort of more than 50% of whatever we're doing when we're talking about networking. I'd say it might be even 80%, since communication before, communication during, and after is it takes a lot of energy, time, but it's totally worth it in terms of building trusting environment. And then it's followed up with the coordinating measures, where our partners are aware of their roles and have a sort of a leverage in decision making whenever they are brought to the decision making table. The next point in dealing with the network building is an adherence to your values. So first of all, it takes some reflection to be aware of your values right at the start, knowing that you're not going to be swayed by some other interest, knowing that you have your priority agenda, and then making your partners being aware that you are serious about your values and that you are you really mean whatever you are stating. That's also very crucial in that regard. And next point would be the complementarity. In our example, like I said, our bottom-up approach was met by the top-down national youth policy building, and in this case, the national agency is doing research at the municipal level, doing the youth policy building. At which point also the resources of the municipality should be mobilized to follow through the youth policy. And also it was a good point of time, place and time where we joined that and with our council building and youth engagement in the local budget planning. So it was all about complementarity. That was another thing. And the next point I would like to emphasize is the sealing the deal. Sometimes is disregarded when we have some agreement with decision makers. We might unintentionally omit the importance of formalizing the agreement, thinking that's what's spelled out is sort of enough in terms of building trust. But from our experience, it is totally vital that everything that is spelled out, everything that is promised and exchanged is reflected in a memorandum or in some sort of agreement document that is later on could be brought up to show that commitment and that avoid some sort of uncertainties in the future. So that is totally crucial. And the later point, I guess, is for the final one in my presentation, in that slide, is the affiliation matters. What I mean under that is that in our case, the affiliation with the EU program, Erasmus Plus in this case particular, it brings a sort of greater credibility to your personally and organization when it comes to networking. It sort of gives you a quality label when dealing with higher ups and when dealing with municipalities or at the central level organizations. So whenever you are a small NGO or especially whenever you are sort of working at the grassroots level, affiliation with the sort of such a large organization as a European Union and Erasmus Plus, it certainly gives you credibility. So that is also another kind of component for the recipe when building a network. And the next slide, I try to just come up with a few ideas on the implications for digital participation when we're talking about building network. There are some points from our experience I'd like to share that's totally digital participation totally worth it, especially in the times of pandemic. It became even more valuable and more seriously taken, I'd say, at least in our context that we're observing. And if before we had to justify that somehow, then now it's just totally natural for people to understand why are we doing it. Sometimes it is attributed to the pandemic that's we are doing this through e-learning process because of the pandemic, but it's actually we had started it long before pandemic, but now it's just became natural. It's kind of shifted to new vehicles. The e-participation allowed us to proceed with our decision-making and user participation thanks to OPIN platform that we are using in the process. So one of the, it's still talking about the user participation, e-participation, we can't disregard the actual participation, actual meetings still matter, and bringing people together first and then following up with the e-participation tools like OPIN is the next stage that is then sort of takes you to another level, but then starting with the meeting, like we had a kickoff meeting where we brought together decision makers of different levels. It matters like in the first place, and especially in the case where some people are not able to participate in that online discussion or are hard to bring in there. But then using digital tools in just combining them and maybe being sort of creative with them to use traditional offline methods like World Cafe method we used online, or brainstorming on other different forms of group work, group thinking methods we used. They all became more, I'd say, valuable or say more productive after they were followed by actual meetings. Yeah, and keeping it manageable, meaning that in the online discussion and online deliberation we're having, we should always be sort of proportionate to the resources we're able to allocate to individual participants, whoever is brought into the deliberation. So not extending your attention, your time, whoever is brought in. That is how you keep it, how you keep quality, how you keep people in and energized. Yeah, and in the end of the day, when it comes to networking, it might not be for everyone. Digital participation, I mean, at some point you gotta ask yourself whoever is left out, so you don't solely rely on you sort of participation, but also you are combining that, and especially you are sort of conveying whatever is happening to people who are not in the process. So just to, yeah, that is I think essential to remind yourself all the time. That is our experience. I try to squeeze it into 15 minutes. I don't know if I managed to, but I'll be happy to answer your questions, your comments.
Thank you, David. That was super interesting. Yeah, thanks a lot. Let's jump to question and answers. Okay. Well, just know that all questions are welcome. Yeah, share whatever you want to share, and you can post a star in the chat to indicate that you want to speak, or just write your question in the chat, and then I will read it out loud. Yeah, who has a question? Who wants to start? It might take some time, so in that case, I will take the first question. David, you said that coordinating and communication really takes a lot of time. I think you said more than 50%. And I think that is probably also the part that is very, very much hands-on, where you really need to pick up your phone or send an email or ask an organization that you have good contacts to forward your case. Can you tell us a little bit of how you really did that in practice? Like, did you just walk up to the municipality and ring the doorbell, or yeah, how did that work for you?
Well, in our case, we're having a person who is in charge for the internal communication with the municipality inside the municipality. There's also supporting us at all levels, say administrative and the higher level decision making. We also have a mayor deputy with us on board, and then communication becomes easier when we need some official letter or we need some confirmation on something that we simply we follow through the formal pathways, and but then communication becomes easier with when you sort of have agreement on the principal issues with that level of sort of representatives. Yeah, and it's always about creating the concept and then creating the description, the details, submitting, sending, and hearing the feedback on it. So it was basically the emails we used, exchange of a lot of emails, the presentations we made to make our intentions proposed clear. Yeah, that is sort of the technicalities of it.
Okay, cool. So there was already a person who was basically in the municipality that was supposed to answer your questions. So that also means that there was an existing structure that you could refer to somehow.
Yeah, otherwise I think it'd be hard. We solely rely on that direct communication with the municipalities and instant feedback we're getting. That is really crucial.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Any other questions? I can't see any stars in the chat, but I can see that Matthias is raising his hand. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. I actually 3 questions, but short one. I'm wondering what age group of youth were you working in specifically? If you had problems with exclusion, because well, some would think that e-participation is more inclusive than standard participation. I'm wondering what's your reflection on it, especially in this project, and what features were you using during this process, e-participation features?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, I don't know, maybe connection. Could you please repeat the first one?
Age of participants.
Oh, age. Yeah, okay. So those are young people from 14 to 26, and there is, you'd say, a very eclectic group in terms of the interests and where they stand. But then, yeah, these are 15 up to 15 young people from 14 to 26. In terms of the inclusion, you're asking, are you referring? What are you exactly referring to when it comes to inclusion? Do you refer to the group we are not? I mean, that is potentially left out from the participation process.
Yes. If you face this problem.
Well, yeah. Oh, actually, we decided to build a youth council at the start in order to facilitate communication, with the municipality, and then we selected the composition of it through competitive call for participants, and we thought about that we're potentially excluding somebody who is not able to participate, but then we need some group of young people who help us build a network with other young people who are being left out. So that's why we've picked up those ones who are able to extend to their knowledge to others, whoever is considered excluded, especially those with fewer opportunities. That is component. We're having the peer education component. We rely on and peer engagement component. We are doing it through volunteering. So also opening up with a window opportunity for volunteers at the local level beyond our council, who will help us engage other young people, whoever we know that's being sort of excluded, may not be able to participate through in e-participation in the process, but then we're thinking of other forms that they can engage in the process. Maybe also opening up a space where we can invite them and then they can contribute to e-participation as well. But yeah, that is something that is we think is taken care of, and it's something that we'll be working in the February to sort of finalize and implement. And the last question was, if I answered the second.
The last question was about the features that you specifically used.
Sure. The features, we've so far used OPIN to identify the needs, local needs, and we used for that brainstorming tool. And basically, that was it. I mean, we have 5 committees, 5 commissions within the council with different priorities, with different themes, and they all organized their project in OPIN, inviting others to post on their needs analysis. So within the first stage, they had to write the need statements, whatever they're thinking is lacking and is needed, and the problem is that in their communities. So that was the first time we used OPIN, and that's now in the next stages. We want to use different tools like idea challenge is another, and the polling we're going to use for sure. We have planned so far. And also, yeah, going back to your second question, would like to add that it was just by coincidence after we finalized the selection of participants for the council, we found out that these participants are selected from very different parts of that region, and we were happy about that. We have sort of geographic diversity in terms of the representation. So it was lucky, I'd say, than intentional. Yep. If I've answered your questions. Thank you, Mateusz.
Okay, any other questions here? Okay, no other questions. I think then I have one more, which would be, when it comes to networking, what would you say was your biggest hurdle so far?
Well, when it comes to networking, is always the problem is always that's making sure that whatever is promised to you is going to be actually implemented and realized. Sometimes you don't want to, and your plans might really change whenever sometimes your expectations are sort of set wrong. It takes an extra flexibility to really, not change your final goal, but change the sort of the path you have taken. So one of the challenges is just making sure that your partner, whoever you rely on, for example, allocating budget, or promising to do something that is really being implemented. So that's where you, I think, need to push hard. There are some sort of rules that you commonly agreed in the start, and then both parties should agree, should follow through them. There is something. There is I think the greatest difficulty when it comes to networking. Overall, I'd say.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I need to do a little bit of noise canceling. Give me 1 second. All right, here I am back again.
Yeah, and the second part to your question, when it comes to networking, it's like a shortcut in the memory. Whenever you think about networking, you think about the decision makers, but then also you need to keep reminding yourself that it's the part of the network are young people, whoever are not included in the process. I mean, and then should be included somehow. And also those ones who are in the council, they are also part of the network and the same value as others. And sometimes when another challenge could be that you select young people who have different sort of motivations that is being revealed in the process, and they're not able to commit as much as they promised, and that can also be challenging. But then also being flexible at this point also is also relevant.
Okay, so flexibility, managing disappointment, and keeping sort of motivation up is what you really need as core competencies here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, David. I think we are sort of, we finalized 3/4 of our time already. So I would slowly jump over to the wrap up of this. So this is what we always do in order to see what we learned today and and that's probably the crucial part, what we want to learn more about, and I can send you this link, and then you can access this and fill in your comments. Okay, I think that should do. This one will be open, and I found one comment that you wrote that I think is very interesting, which is, what do you want to learn more about? Young people's perspective, their experience in using e-participation solutions. I'm taking that one in particular with me because even though I know that everyone has great intentions, I think, yeah, really getting those perspectives would be super valuable. And yeah, we should keep that in mind. Thank you for that one. And apart from that, I think that, for example, this topic of activation of youth, that will be something that will continuously be interesting for us. And we will definitely keep that in mind. And let me jump back into the presentation, because then we can, that's not so interesting. For now, you all know that. That brings me to the next online meeting on the 23rd February, because we actually want to talk about how to really get people on board. And that's where we will discuss good practices for activation and registration. So that probably covers that need a little bit. And yeah, we will also try to look at how you actually really do it in the best way to make sure that people use your tool, and yeah, to manage this barrier of getting people to use something, and how we can work on that together. And the idea for now is to do it a little more collaboratively and have a super short input, and then find strategies together, maybe in a more of a workshop setting. But yeah, we're still working on that, and we would also be super happy to see you there. And yeah, if you don't have any other questions, I think we can close the chapter Open Community Meeting for today. And yeah, I can't see anyone raising hands or posting stars or anything. So I will just say thank you so much for joining us today, and hope to see you on the 23rd of February. All right. Bye, everyone.